Okay, welcome to today's panel. Before we start, I'm going to go over a few events that are coming up. This evening, as ever, as part of the Shamba House reading series, there will be two writers, Gada Al-Absi and Oki Madasari, at Shamba House at 5 p.m. tonight. Also tonight, Kinga Toth will be, where is she? I saw her somewhere. She will be at the Trumpet Blossom as part of their Feed Me Weird Things series, and that will start at 9 p.m. Beginning this Sunday, there will be a series of events as part of the Iowa City Festival of Books and also the International Writing Program's 50th anniversary celebration. At the back of this room by the beverages is a sheet like this that lists all of the 50th anniversary events, and I recommend, rather than hear me read them all to you now, you pick up this piece of paper and attend as many as you can, including the gala celebration next Wednesday night at 6 p.m. at the IMU in the second floor ballroom. Okay. So that's So in my experience, especially over the last couple of years, there have been a couple of questions that seem to come up again and again amongst writers. And the first one is one of identity. And I heard that again and again when you all introduced yourselves on the very first day you were here. And almost all of you, many of you spoke about the artistic compulsion to challenge and complicate notions of identity. And I think the second thing that comes up again and again follows from that, which is the artist's obligation. If you are choosing to contribute your voice to a conversation, what is your obligation? And how are you empowered to and obligated to really engage with these questions of identity and the ways in which identity can be constructed, and the ways in which cultural directives come from those constructions. And that's what these writers are going to talk to you about today. This panel is Emancipating Bodies, Encountering Taboos. How does literature still contend with sexual, cultural, and religious taboos? Are there subjects still too daunting to take on? Class, race, gender, sexual orientation, body. What are the remaining literary taboos, and can a work control meaning while breaking norms? And I'm going to read to you introduce to you the writers who are going to address this today. First, we will have Ramsha ASHRAF. She's from Pakistan and has a collection of poetry enmeshed in 2015 and publishes poems on her blog Escritura 415 and elsewhere, and contributes to literary magazines. At the Foundation University's Rawalpindi campus, she teaches writing courses, develops arts curricula, and produces visual media. Maung is from Myanmar and has published 6 poetry books in Burmese and 1 in English. His poetry has appeared in International Poetry Review, Guernica, The Wolf, The All, and elsewhere. He translates widely between English and Burmese. His visual work and poetry are exhibited and curated internationally. Santiago GIRALT, is that right? Is that your last? Is that the good one? You're wrong. Okay. Writes plays, screenplays, and novels, and directs films. In 2017, he was awarded the National Arts Fund Bicentennial Grant in Literature. His first novel, Nellie R., The General's Lover, was shortlisted for the 2008 Planeta International Prize. La Mala Memoria came out in 2015. Disparo is forthcoming. He has written and directed over a dozen films and participated in many international film festivals. Tilottama MAJUMDER. We practiced it. We practiced that, and that's still, all right. Is a fiction writer and poet from India. She won the Ananda Puraskar given for excellence in Bengali literature for her novel Basudhara. More than 10 titles have followed. Her fiction and poetry have been translated into several Indian languages, including English. She also writes for children. She works at the Ananda Publishers in Kolkata. Subraj Singh teaches at the University of Guyana and the National School of Theatre, Arts, and Drama, and has a weekly arts column in the Guyana Chronicle. His Rebel and Other Stories won the 2015 Guyana Prize for Literature as the best first book of fiction. His play Mask won the 2016 National Drama Festival Awards for Best New Guyanese Play and Best Production. You're going to hear from them and answer all these questions now.
Pronunciation at all. You're wonderful. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. My name is Ramsha, ASHRAF, as I was introduced. Because we have limited time, so I'm just going to read through the paper, but I would like to encourage you to ask questions because there are literary names, peculiarly from South Asian literature, which you might want to know more about. So the paper which I'm going to present is titled as Breaking Taboos or Claiming Well-Deserved Space. When I was reminded of the topic I'm supposed to deliver my paper on, titled Emancipating Bodies and Countering Taboos, I thought I would discuss the role writers of the subcontinents have played in presenting an alternate reality to the political, cultural, religious, and mainstream social discourse. I grew up admiring and reading Mirza Asadullah Khan Ghalib, Saadat Hasan Manto, Mir Taqi Mir, Ismat Chughtai, Amarta Pritam, Sara Shagufta, Wajida Tabassum, and Salman Rushdie, and a list of other writers forced down the lane of the margin because they touched upon literary, cultural, political, and religious taboos, which were too objectionable to be deciphered and accepted by mainstream society. Satanic verses is one example because you all are familiar with that. But then when I read Toni Morrison's collection of lectures, The Origin of Others, and I started reading it while I was here, it expanded my understanding of the overlapping social and political problems between the United States and subcontinent. I started thinking about writers raising their voices all over the world, and maybe that was the moment of realization. I realized that it was not only in Ghalib's time that the religious discourse was subverted and challenged by his usage of extraordinary metaphors. For example, he says, "Tujhe wali mante jo na bada khwar hota." Again, I would consider you a saint if you were not an alcoholic. So he was challenging the Holy Scripture, that is Quran. I was not supposed to say that, but in the flow. It was not only in Saadat Hasan Manto's fiction that the entire patriarchal setup is challenged by the depiction of prostitution and women's economic stability as an answer to the male-privileged society. For example, Thanda Gosht, Kholdo, and so many other stories, and even his dramas. Let me just add that he was trialed 6 times, pre-partition and post-partition, for his use of obscenity. He was trialed for that. So I realized that it was not only Amarta Pritam who crossed social boundaries, like the concept that women shouldn't be involved in politics, and who wrote one of the most politically charged poems, Aj Aakhaं Waris Shah nu kithon kabran itchon bol, ek roi si thi Punjab di tu lik lik mare vain, Aj lakhaं tiyan paiyan rondiyan, Tenu Waris Shah nu can. And I give you the loose translation. It says, Waris Shah is one of the most important Punjabi poet. And she is addressing Waris Shah during partition scenario. And she says that, get up from your grave and see the bloodshed. There was only one woman after which you have wrote the entire collection of your poetry. Now there are so many women who have gone through suffering and bloodshed. So, contemporaneous with partition violence, these issues relating to religion, patriarchy, gender, and minorities' political marginalization also appear in Toni Morrison's representation of the struggle against the institutionalized hegemony of power structures, be it radicalization of power through sex, gender, color of bodies, or religious and economic classes. As a young researcher and victim of such power structures, I can see the margins and minorities of my society in equivalence with what Ta-Nehisi Coates describes in his foreword. There is this typographical mistake. It's not forward, it's forward, and it's a forward to this book. So, to the origin of others as other, to exist beyond the border of a great belonging. which refers to minorities as the kind of economic anxiety that appears as a major threat on the politically destabilized system. The system that increasingly utilizes religion as its main tool to exploit the majority as well as the minority. At this point, when the intolerance prevails and dominates the pragmatism of living together in difference, if not equally, then tolerantly, I find literary protest to be the best available option. Resolving these problems is not as simple as it may appear from the paper and from my talk. I may interpret a naked woman standing on the road as a silent political statement, or maybe as a metaphor of beauty in my poetry. But this society that is trained and groomed in utilizing and interpreting that body as an object, to borrow from Julia Kristeva, would never allow those interpretations to make a room for themselves. Hence, either they would be buried down under the manuscripts of social morality. I don't need to name social morality manuscripts, we all are familiar with that. Or they would be celebrated only within margins. In both situations, I find that my works serve the purpose of subversion. I'm fully aware of the fact that it will take more than centuries to fully understand what we call emancipation or freedom or liberty. But still, as a writer, I feel I can stand with Nina Simone to sing "Goddamn Mississippi" for whatever it is worth. And I can join the spirit of Amarta Pritam, Saadat Hasan Manto, Mirza Ghalib, and Wajida Tabassum, claiming a well-deserved space and political, economic, and social setup. At times, not all the time, referring to my body, which remains a strong metaphor. Again, I repeat, a strong metaphor in my work. Thank you so very much.
Hello. It's really interesting, Ramsha. I was thinking how similar the situations are in my country. My paper is called "A Rotting Whale in a Tiny Room: The Issues of Censorship in Contemporary Burmese Literature." Fish are fish, rivers are rivers, mountains are mountains, and cacti are cacti. They self-publish their works and are not censored. A character in a Burmese novel called "Sticks on Fire" is a gay boy mocked for wearing lipstick and women's clothes. His family suffers from shame. A girl living next door is also gay and mocked for having a man's haircut and wearing men's clothes. She is a disgrace for her family. The two families plot a marriage for their two abnormal children. The boy and the girl go through a series of awkward and painful situations together and finally realize they aren't meant to be gay, for gay is not normal. The story ends with a happy wedding, with the two characters becoming their normal selves, meaning a normal boy and normal girl. And this book is a comedy. Somebody made a movie based on this novel and people liked it. They loved themselves sick in the cinema. Meanwhile, so many gay men and women in the country moved farther into the closet with fright and cold sweats. Nini is a 20-year-old girl full of life and color. One night she came back home late from her work and got attacked by two men. She was raped and seriously injured. Her neighbors thought that's up to right. She likes to wear hot pants and makeup, so this is the price she pays, that little slut, they said. This kind of comment outrages some women who have started to really dislike the prejudice and self-censorship imposed on them by the society. Mica is a young female poet who wrote a poem about an uncle molesting his young niece. She gave the details of the nightly horror the young girl has to go through. The cold hand moving under her skirt, a greasy face looking at her with brutal anger of some sort, and the weight of fear on her mind. Mica posted this poem on Facebook and met with jeers and anger from Facebook users, both male and female. Many of them viciously attacked her with comments for writing such sexual matters so openly. Over the past 50 years, the military government has censored everything that they consider was against the Burmese cultural values and against the regime. The quasi-civilian government, that came to power in 2011 lifted the censorship and closed down the press scrutiny and registration department. But it does not mean that censorship is abolished entirely. There are still governmental mechanisms that scrutinize publications, film screenings, and art exhibitions. The only difference is the censors just stopped calling themselves censors. Another form of censorship comes from the people, poets and writers who in their writings show their sympathy for the persecuted religious and ethnic minorities are likely to get abuses from the majority Buddhists. They criticize the actions of fundamentalists. If they criticize the actions of fundamentalist monks and even Aung San Suu Kyi, they will be targeted by Mabata, a group of nationalist monks that were instrumental in establishing ban on interfaith marriages. This has forced poets and writers to resort to self-censorship. With the rise of social media, a lot of young Burmese writers and poets have been trying to publish their works that challenge the traditional literary norms. Their works often upset the readers with their use of sexual references. Female poets and writers are also trying to tell their side of the story in this extremely patriarchal society. Their works have been responded with outrage from the majority of the readership, and many local publishers and magazines have tried to stay away from them. Burma is a tiny room, and the walls have numerous eyes watching everyone who lives inside, while the sexist, racist, and nationalist narratives float around in the air like a rotting whale. Thank you.
Buenos días. Hola, hola. Buenos días. Good day. The title of my paper is in honor of one of, I think, most powerful contemporary filmmakers, Pedro Almodóvar, The Skins We Live In, and it's an homage for someone who really was a landmark for me to discover my own sexuality and freedom in this world. And also I want to dedicate this talk to an Argentinian writer that I also thought he was really brave. His name is Manuel Puig. He wrote this novel that is called The Kiss of the Spider Woman. You might have seen or heard about the movie. It was done with Sonia Braga and Raúl Juliá in 1985. A movie that I like, not as good as the novel, but it's a good movie. So he was also one of the, when I was 15, I read one of his novels that, like, censorship in my house never went through books or movies, so it was a good place to find myself. Here we go. I was 13 years old when I first read the psychological thriller The Talented Mr. Ripley by Patricia Highsmith. In the novel, wealthy New York shipbuilder Herbert Greenleaf requests Tom Ripley to retrieve his son, Dickie, from Italy and convince him to join the family business. This is a plot Patricia Highsmith took from The Ambassadors by Henry James. Tom's ambiguous class-based and sexual desire regarding Dickie, as seen when Dickie spots Ripley wearing his clothes in his room, ultimately leads Tom to kill his friend and steal his identity. I was awestruck by the fact that a woman could write such a complex male character. Remember, I was 13. It led me to realize that all reading and writing is inherently a type of total transvestism, in the sense that when we read, we must all assume other imagined identities. I was a gay teenager reading about an adult male character written by a middle-aged lesbian woman. Does the sex, age, or race of the reader or writer matter when we engage in a story? I never wanted to be a gay writer or a gay director, but somehow this is how I've always been framed. This is not only because of my subject matter, but also because of how my public life is viewed as a gay man. I just want to be a writer or a director, plain. After all, gender dissolves in a work of art. Inside a work of art, all gender, age, and race-based tensions can be represented by anyone. Since gender dissolves in art, these subject matters and those who write about them should be viewed as universal, no different from any other non-gay artists or the subjects they address. I love books because they allow me to inhabit other people's minds, skins, souls, and bodies. I can be an African-American slave girl in Toni Morrison's Beloved, a Japanese prince in Japan's 11th century novel, The Tale of Genji, or an Irish woman in James Joyce's Ulysses. I get aroused by Molly Bloom's obsessions with her lover's penis at the same time that I mourn alongside her when she remembers her dead son. Literature creates a silent bond between two minds, separated in time and space, an imaginary bond that begins when the opening letters of the page, with the opening letters of the page, and remains long after the book returns back to its shelf. I can comfortably read A Bend in the River by Naupal in my home in Argentina, while spending time in that unnamed town in the interior of Africa. My first novel is written from the perspective of a 14-year-old girl living with ex-President General Perón after his wife's death, a sort of taboo in and of itself. This is based on a real-life story, and the military coup that got Perón out of the government used this case for two reasons. First, to discredit Perón, which was already like a pretty fishy thing, but instead of only attacking him, he fled the country. They put the little girl in an orphanage and they processed her parents for giving her to an older man. So my second novel is a novel of voices. The narrator oscillates between a fat boy, an old virgin lady, a 15-year-old girl, an aging widow of 18 who is losing her memory, and others. I had to mutate for each character, fine-tuning the reception antenna for each distinct voice. I had to embody them, give them my body, as a medium does, to make them talk. In film, I write mostly strong female leading characters, and in general, secondary male characters. Women's emotions enthrall me, and I explore their mystery when I write from their point of view, which allows me to showcase the machismo in my society. Though melodrama is sometimes considered a minor form, it allows me to complexly express heightened emotions and irrational passions. When I write, I start from my characters' desires and frustrations in an attempt to understand them, which pushes me to break taboos and transcend my own sense of decency. When I read, I feel like I'm making love with the writer. His words become part of my body. I hope this happens to my readers when they read me. This is how I read, to escape the narrow confines of identity. For me, writing is the most perfect free form of transvestism. I can mutate into one single phrase from the adult man that I am into a ghost, or even dissolve my being into a vaporous, abstract sentence like a line of poetry.
Thank you for being here. The title is Why? Why Not? I will ask till death. Taboo is a strict prohibition of behavior, an important part of social and individual identity. And sometimes taboo is a conflict between these two. To start with this article, I find myself with this conflict. As a child, I always asked my mom, why not? Don't laugh loudly, don't shake your legs, don't ask questions, she said. Obey your elders. But I never stopped asking why. I ignored all the rules society and family laid down for me. So what if I was not the most adorable child? My younger cousins viewed me as a hero. I attended a co-education school and had many friends who were boys. I didn't mind their sex, but I was always scolded. Mom was also scared and ashamed of my behavior. The relatives used to come up to her, taunting that the fruit that ripened quickly was also the first to rot. Mom would beat me with a stick, berating, "Why are you so argumentative, arrogant, and stubborn?" I just wished for an explanation of why I should not have male friends. My mom is not a prejudiced woman. She was pressured to raise me this way. I was brought up in the countryside on a tea plantation which was beautiful but provincial. When I left for higher studies in Kolkata, I was surprised to see that many different taboos existed in the city life as well, like casteism and the belief in superstitions. I joined a theater group as a social revolutionary, unconcerned about my career. Theater became my passion. I married when it was time for me to marry. When I did so, my parents and relatives felt relieved. But that's when I was bitten for the first time. My in-laws prohibited me from going to the theater and forced me to stop communicating with my friends. Because I was completely against dowry, they tortured me like a slave. I had always heard about domestic violence. Now I was experiencing it. I realized I had to make myself financially independent. My voice choked. One day, my poems started asking, why not? No one supported me because I was argumentative, soon rotten, always asking questions at the wrong time. But were I modest and obedient? No one would have helped me, since it's a taboo for girls to live away from their in-laws, since taboos are also intertwined with finance and power. Girls are reduced to financial burdens and boys financial assets. Caged for 8 years, I finally left penniless to support myself with a temporary job and writing. My mom was helpless defending me. Being a divorcee is a taboo, and writing about controversial issues in society as a woman is criticized. I suffered with my first husband and witnessed lethal taboos like the forced abortion of female fetuses. I wrote about these problems. How could I ignore them? My novels were about homosexuality, incest, sexual exploitation, prostitution, gigolos, and other social problems too. I used the language of the slum dwellers. People kept coming to my helpless mother to call me pervert or crazy. But she never tired of saying, my daughter writes the truth. I believe there is no issue in this world that cannot be literature. A writer's pen goes with the times, even when they are paradoxical. We believe in global citizenship. We fight with each other over uncountable social issues. These issues are deliberately used for political and financial gains, but also for controlling social boundaries. For instance, what is taboo for one class is not taboo for another. Politics, finance, power, and taboo are inextricably intertwined. Even our epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, contested socio-political taboos. What Krishna and the Buddha tried in 5,000 years BC, what Mahatma Gandhi and Tagore tried in first half century, we follow in their path. We ask feebly, why not? But together we roared the question against the evil. Literature inspires questioning and liberates the mind, leading civilization towards progress. Taboos remains, but are being reshaped. In the 18th century, Hindu widows were burnt alive alongside their husbands' corpses, and education for girls was prohibited. Today, government signs read, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, means save the girls, educate them. And women fight for women with the rest of our country. A war is being waged against abominable taboos. I am a warrior with a pen in my hand and will remain till death. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hello. Thank you for this opportunity, IWP. And I need to say that it really is an honor for me to be able to share this panel with all the other amazing writers here. Thank you. This paper is a bit experimental. And when it comes to experimentation, if you move a single full stop out of place, it can kind of ruin the whole thing. So there's been one error on the paper, and the correct version is going to be projected on the screen behind me. So when we get there, you let me know if you can see the difference between what's on the paper and what's on screen. So since this is experimental, we'll start at the bottom with the little footnote. This paper advocates for a form of experimental writing that uses the written text itself to imbue symbolic value to characters and themes. I first came across a version of this style while reading Mark Z. Danilewski's fantastic horror novel, House of Leaves, which, in a way, further underscores the applicability of using the style for addressing social taboos, as all taboos are regarded as horror by those who choose to brand them as such. Bodies of words and words in the bodies of words and bodies in the words, form and content in literature about taboos. Dark skin, curly hair, dancing, eating with our hands, certain religious rituals, same-sex love, interracial marriage, and many others are some examples of non-harmful, non-violent traits and acts concerning the body that can be found in the literature familiar to my part of the world, Guyana and the Caribbean. At some point in our history, the features and acts of the body in the incomplete list above were looked down upon by some sections of society, and they have all been rendered taboo. There have been and continue to be attempts to shut down, eradicate, and negate these taboos. But what is the true meaning of this word? Outlining the strange and unwanted, the unwelcome, misunderstood, and unknown in scarlet for the world to see? Or, more insidiously, a tool used to order? For writers to successfully write about everything the word connotes, we must understand what the word represents and, more deeply, society's true purpose in labeling and branding acts and peoples as taboo. Actions and characteristics identified as taboo are highlighted to be repudiated and destroyed. Taboos, regardless of religious, cultural, and moral significance, assume a place in society that emphasizes these traits by labeling, marking, or striking them out while simultaneously demonizing and denigrating them, so that eventually they will be eliminated entirely. For example, homosexuals in Guyana bravely exhibiting their sexuality by dress, holding their partner's hand, and publicly displaying affection face constant bullying, threats, and coercion. As a gay man myself, this attempted crossing out of the narratives of a unique, alternative minority is terrifying. I am taboo. Despite the discrimination and negativities associated with being taboo, we homosexuals continue to survive, live, and love between the lines drawn over us, around us, holding us bound. Presenting this paper, I make my taboo self known to the world and reach beyond the limits preventing me from discussing my sexuality, from coming out to my parents, from buying my boyfriend flowers on anniversaries. To ask how literature contends with taboos is to ask how literature contends with me, a taboo. Do I think that my body, my feelings, the sum of my thoughts, subjected to scrutiny, ridicule, and disdain, belong to the same category of writing as normalness? How can I be Times New Roman 12 double-spaced into neat lines and paragraphs when in the real world I am scarlet, scratched out, with my faults magnified for everyone to see? If you write about me, should your words not contain the very essence of the strange, the unknown, the pervasive, and the fear-inducing that makes my taboo definitive of me? Should your words not seek to represent me exactly? how can I be written alongside the norm? If you write me in your stories, I want you to mix my past with my present. The teenager watches. I want the adult me to listen to the teenage me tell stories, while the other schoolboys in uniform go out to play cricket and I go to the library, but that's okay, because the library got me here. In your plays, show teenage me reading exactly how the taboos relationships are shaped. Dad, what? Let us go for a swim. Teenage me, no. Dad, let us go play some cricket. Teenage me, no. Dad looks away disappointedly. In your poems, write me in words and symbols that show exactly what I am. If you ever write about taboos, embrace their weirdness and otherness. Make it a part of your text. Put our taboo bodies in your bodies of words and let them comment on each other. Force the taboo onto your reader. Discomfort them until they see what really lies beneath, until they see that literature is literature regardless of form, as people are people regardless of taboos.
You have questions for these writers? Yoko, right over there. Okay, I'll check with you.
Thank you. You really inspired me today because as a writer, and I have come across a taboo. You read about and you hear about those murders in Las Vegas, and they keep asking, why? The shooter, they say he was this and he was that. But I've come to the conclusion why the shooter did it is because he hates white people. And this is a taboo. Black people can hate white people, but white people can't hate white people. So everybody argues with me. And, you know, he was insane. And I mean, trying to find every excuse in the world for the man, when you look at the evidence and you look at his relationship with his girlfriend, he was affected by something that happened last year, and we all are affected by what happened last year because it's sitting in the White House. So why, when you come across these taboos, it seems like you're arguing with the world and they're making excuses why the taboo cannot be true?
Okay. I'm gonna try. For me, I don't think I'm making excuses for my own personal taboos. I think the point of my paper was to sort of embrace it and to encourage other people to embrace it. I think, what really are taboos? They're just a way of saying, I don't understand this, and therefore I will not accept this because I don't understand it. So for me, if you embrace your own taboos, that means one, you are understanding your own self and your own taboos, and therefore you should be able to explain that and express that to people who might not. So I don't think okay, in a way I am. In a way, all writers fight against the world. But for me, it's about accepting the difference and the strangeness and the otherness. That's an important part of it, while pushing back and fighting against the suppression and the othering.
Yeah, I would add to that sometimes when I write or I make movies, I don't see some of the things as taboo, but when I show them, they get people really angry. So, there's a scene in my latest movie where this kid is sleeping in a tent with his gay father and his father's lover, future husband in the movie, and it's a comedy and it's told from the point of view of the kid, and the actual kid actor is the actual son of the one of the two actors that are with him in the tent, and they're reading. The father is this gay character reading Jean Genet. He's reading the maids, the servants. And people, like in one of the screening, this man got up like, this is obscene, this is horrible. How could a kid be sleeping between these two men? And it was like, it's shot like a Disney movie. It's like all color, and the kids, like, they have really funky pajamas and blah, blah, blah. So sometimes I think that, that in my case, I have I live my taboos inside of me very freely, and sometimes I encounter them once they become the form, and I think that usually shocks me. Even my own family, when I wrote my last novel, my mother, I didn't talk to my mother for 6 months because she thought I exposed all my family's secrets. So I usually think that there's the two sides for the taboos, the taboos of the writer and the taboos of the reception. And somehow I think the beautiful friction between those two boundaries is what makes art so interesting. And I really think about this guy that shot these people. It's really hideous to see how the media treat this, because it's really hard for the media to frame a white male doing this, and how they really have to accommodate their discourse to make it sound. It does shows all the symptoms of some underlying racism in this society. When you hear how they try to lone wolf or things like that, they wouldn't use the same terminology if this person would have belonged to any minority. And I didn't even hear this when the Florida shooting happened, with this guy killing all these people. Like it was an undercurrent that, well, maybe these pervert people kind of deserve it. So yeah, I think it's super sad, but it also allows us to think a lot about how media are representing taboos right now.
Hi, thank you. I was so deeply engaged with each presentation, and also self-reflexive as I listened to you talking about me. Although you are you and I am I, there's so much going on that is familiar to all of us as writers. And I kind of was thinking, as I listened to you, about some of the anthropological meanings of taboo as a sacred, something sacred to be cordoned off, not to be touched, and not to be seen by all eyes. It's that Pandora box that's there that we all know is there, and we're not supposed to open it because it will let chaos out into the world. And I think it's such a strong metaphor for what we do as writers. So much that's supposed to be sacred has this, the thing is, it's cordoned off. Don't go there. It's supposed to be invisible. Don't show it. It's not supposed to be spoken about. Don't talk about it. And I think this is where the courage of writing comes into play, where if we as writers don't engage with the thou shalt not, then sometimes we're not touching on the important issues. I don't know what your thoughts on this might be.
So I actually agree with that, because remember in my reading I gave that background to my poem Death Sirens, and how I thought that this shouldn't be the part of my literary career, because it is so vivid, and it's very sexually explicit. But I guess that there is undertone to it, and that really criticizes the culture of mosques and religious sermons that are very much part of Pakistani culture and society. That you're sitting here and you hear this very sharp noise of, I am not supposed to say, but azan, or someone is preaching on loudspeaker, and you're working and you're doing something and your thoughts are shattered, completely shattered. So I wrote about it, and it was highly criticized because first it was sexually explicit. Second, it was touching upon the thing that is very normal in Pakistani culture, and everyone gets along with that. So I agree with that, because that is the force, that is a motivational force, where you feel that you see they all have become numbed and they don't feel anything, but this is not right. So let's just write about it and see if they are totally numbed or they can respond to it. So if they criticize it, and if they and from they I mean your reader, your society, if they actually react to it, it means that they're not numb. Your thing is going through their sensibilities.
But sometimes they say nothing.
Silence is another way, you see, sound of silence. So at times only your presence, at times only your body gestures, your look, it conveys a whole lot. And meanwhile, we are talking about color of bodies. Meanwhile, we are talking about your whereabouts. So the way you carry across, I guess it says a whole lot. That what is your point? What is your point of existence? So I agree with what you're saying. At the same time, I feel that there are ways, because there are writers. For example, from my part of the world, there is this writer Intezar Hussain. And he earned his living through writing, but he never goes directly against issues like partition, issues like death of different civilizations in Pakistan. He does it very subtly. So I guess every other individual, every other writer has its own peculiar ways towards it. That's it.
Yeah, but I am a bit confused about this taboo subject, because sometimes I see that the will to get rid of the taboos are becoming a taboo also. Like I am telling you that it's a question to me. I am not at all a very conservative person. Not about anything. I believe in liberalism. So I observed something in our country, even in other countries too, that say a singer, a female singer, she is a God gifted. She has a God gifted voice, and she became famous throughout our country and even outside also. After some years, she started changing her dress, like exposing her body. Yes, exposing someone's body, either female or male. It's completely a personal thing. I believe she may expose, but these times it is becoming a taboo for female singers that only the voice is not enough for them. They are supposed to expose their bodies. My question is, when a male singer comes on the stage and sings for the public, he hasn't to show his bodies.
Well, Ricky Martin does.
I was about to say.
It's completely,
And we are very grateful.
Can show them. I believe in that liberty. If someone wants to show himself or herself, it's okay, it's fine, it's acceptable. But I am telling, if it is supposed to do, if she is, yes, is there any silent pressure upon them that your voice is not enough, you have to be slim, you have to maintain your figure, you have to be attractive.
Well-
So this is also a taboo.
Well, Tilottama, it's not only limited to music industry. I guess in publishing, and it's all over the world because I have gone through this. If you need a good job, you need a good cleavage as well. So, and this maybe because we come from third world country, and it's all over the world. So yes, women can relate to that. If you want to get your book published, sleep with your editor and sleep with your publisher, and you're famous in just one night. So I guess this is. It's not even taboo, it's something which has become a very common practice.
Yes, I think it's an exploitation, sexual exploitation. I see it in that way. Because a talent is not enough for a person if the person is a female. So showing, it was a time when we always used to cover ourselves like all throughout our body. So now it's different. We can show our body
It's not different.
Can I ask
It's not different in Pakistan because again, there are regions in Pakistan. Even if you're going there as tourists, you need to cover your face. You need to have proper veil, and you need to have proper Muslim identity with you, and you cannot go with any other man other than your father, brother, or your husband. So we are not exactly to that point. I'm talking about my culture.
Yes, of course.
We are not exactly to that point of liberalism or liberty for human will. We still have this kind of Talibanization, and we still have this kind of war against terror going on. So there is much to what she says. There's much to Pandora box. We open it and it stares in our face.
Yes, it's really terrible. But I just want to share as a funny thing, like here when I for the first time I came in America. I saw it in the films before, but I just experienced that when people meet on the road with each other, even they are not acquainted with each other, still they say hi, or at least they smile when they have their eye contact. So I loved this gesture very much. So I thought maybe I can start this gesture in my country. So when I started doing the thing in my country, two things happened with me. Some people started thinking that I am crazy, and some people started thinking that it's a sign I am a prostitute.
Wow.
Can I say something? Hi. One comment. I think this whole debate about how women dress, we should be very, very careful. I should be. I'm not saying to you what to do. Not shaming women in the process, because it's such a fine line between this slut shaming that is between the lines. I'm not saying something about it's in the air. The other thing I wanted to ask you about newer taboos, because maybe the people here in this room sharing some liberal or post-liberal values, but maybe there are taboos that are our taboos, and maybe these taboos are important in a way. What would we do with a racist writer? What will do? I'm really asking it. I don't have an answer. I'm asking because I think we can agree that the taboos that you refer to are terrible. But maybe we should think which taboos are taboos for us right now.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Yeah, I believe that racist mind is a very primitive thing. It's not a new thing, and it's not the thing that it's not any taboo for this age, for modern age. It's a primitive thing, and it's coming from old times.
So not exactly, because when I refer to Toni Morrison's The Origin of Others, and when I read Ta-Nehisi quotes, and when I see these African plus African American writers talking about racism, I can so relate with them, and I never knew about it before. So
Maybe the opposite.
Yes.
Asking whether you go with the writer who is not Toni Morrison, the great Toni Morrison, who a writer that he is racist. Whether we do with
Yeah, like we were talking about, like, would you watch a Polanski movie, or like, would you watch a Woody Allen movie knowing his personal, like it's a question that it's really hard to debate in 2 seconds. But one of the things that I would say about that is that unluckily, if this would be a debate that makes like intelligent people think, I would say, well, let's keep their work there so we can debate about what's been a racist. But unluckily, they get followers, and they get people who follow their philosophies to support their own system of beliefs, and that's the dangerous side of it. But in a way, I think if we consider art as an expression of human ideology in general, I think sometimes it could be used to really address the issues that other good, well-thinking writers already are resolving in their work. To have a few, like I'm thinking about like Cioran, not Cioran. Celine, exactly, Celine. I was thinking about him. Like, it's like he's there to remind us somehow about this very, very hardcore way of thinking, but it always is a double-edged sword. Like, for the people who can debate with it, we can think from there, and from the crazy followers who really think that's a philosophy, it could be like a Bible. So I don't really know. I don't have a real answer.
I wanted to say, but basically she was talking about racist writers, and I took it other ways. So maybe, again, I don't have a clear answer to that, again, because it's such a widespread phenomenon, and also because we all are writers, and we know that words matter. So when a writer is a racist, it's a big problem. So I guess we cannot say anything for the moment, being we are trapped somewhere. All right.
So my question is directed to the writer from Myanmar. So you use the term rotting whale at the very end. It seems very scary, actually. So all of us could feel us, trapped in this room. I mean, I think that's what you wanted to create, right? So I wanted to have you expand on why you used rotting whale and what the other writers on the panel might use as an animal. The poor whale shouldn't be the only one, Thank you.
All right, thank you to all the writers for your contributions and to all you for your questions. Please come to all of our 50th celebration events beginning this Sunday and through next week. Okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.